Hot on the trail of the cunning and the ruthless, now on BBC One, Jill Dando.
There are 3 or 4 robbers who, when they see our reconstruction, may be haunted by feelings of remorse, or even, if they're superstitious, by the ghost of a woman. The offence was committed by a man who's obviously obsessed, and if he's not caught, he might well try to hurt someone again. And for what it's worth, legend has it that the woman in the picture can create unsettling events wherever her portrait goes.
Hello and welcome to part 1 of the Dando Webb, an investigation of mine into the assassination of Jill Dando. The reason I'm looking into this is because information has come to light that the BBC Golden Girl Jill Dando, who was gunned down on the doorstep of her Fulham home, was not murdered by a lone nut, nor was she murdered by a Serb assassin, nor was she murdered by a criminal exposed by the Crime Watch programme. No, ladies and gentlemen, it seems that the murder of Jill Dando is an example of an establishment hit, and as such it's quite obvious that it's not going to be investigated properly by the police or by the judiciary or by the BBC or the broadcast media in general. And so I think, ladies and gentlemen, it's up to the people to investigate this one. So in that spirit, I've put together a number of articles, some of which were buried in the newsprint at the time and have not been really expressed in the mainstream media. And I've put these articles together with news clips and some facts and allegations which are floating around on the internet at the moment, and some choice moments from light entertainment. What I've done is I've put together the what I believe is the definitive reconstruction. It's the reconstruction of the reconstruction, ladies and gentlemen. It's the reconstruction with all the bits that are omitted from the original reconstruction. When I say omitted, I mean left out from all the other televisual reconstructions. To see if we can't put together a clearer idea of what happened to Jill Dando and who some of the conspirators behind her murder were. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to draw your attention to this. Let's see if I could just get this over here. Hold on. Yes, this.
Daily Star, Sunday. Exclusive. Tragic Jill Dando probed BBC pedo ring. Murdered TV presenter Jill Dando tried to expose a paedophile ring involving big-name BBC stars, a former colleague has claimed. Published 21st of July, 2014. According to the retired BBC worker, the Crime Watch host was told that DJs, stars and corporate staff were involved in organised abuse. But when she tried to get bosses to investigate the alleged ring and other abuse complaints inside the BBC, no one wanted to know, the former friend said. Undeterred, Jill is said to have then raised the claims with senior management in the mid-1990s, but no investigation took place. The TV host was shot dead a few years later on the doorstep of her London home. The 37-year-old's murder remains unsolved. Her ex-colleague, who was asked to remain anonymous, said, "I don't recall the names of all the stars now, and I don't really want to implicate anyone, but Jill said that they were surprisingly big names. I think she was quite shocked when told about images of children and that information on how to join this horrible paedophile ring was freely available." Jill said that others had complained to her about sexual matters, and that some fellow female workmates also claimed that they had been groped or assaulted. Nothing had been done, and there seemed to be a policy of turning a blind eye. The source told how female colleagues went to Jill, who was then one of the best-known faces on TV. She said, "I think it was the mid-1990s. Jill was working on almost everything then, including Crime Watch and Holiday. She was seen as a face of the BBC and a magnet for women with problems. She compiled a file of complaints, but was not really an investigative journalist, just a presenter. She passed the information to someone else and they gave it back. No one wanted to know. I do remember she gave a file to senior management. I don't think she heard any more. Other women who complained told Jill that they didn't want to risk their careers by making official statements against individuals, as they would lose their jobs and that bosses seemed to ignore it. We all decided the best way was to keep our heads down and to always try to go somewhere with a colleague. The BBC said it would look into the allegations, but added, "We have not seen anything to substantiate these claims." Presenters Liz Kershaw and Miriam O'Reilly have both made allegations of sexual harassment at the BBC.
I've got so many stories to tell, and one day I will. But, weird things went on.
After Jimmy Savile was exposed as a paedophile and a serial sex attacker in 2012, fellow BBC presenter Sally Jones spoke of how he had tried to grope her in a lift. She confided in Jill after the attack, adding that the Crime Watch host said she had had to fend off plenty of unwelcome advances herself. Sally said Jill told her Savile was just a dirty old perv.
My word, look at that.
Jill was shot dead on the doorstep of her home in Fulham in 1999. Barry George was found guilty of her murder in 2001, but his conviction was quashed in 2008.
They've not been told all the truth.
Jill joined a campaign to help children spot paedophiles the year before she died.
Her private life was often public. Earlier this year, she announced her engagement to a doctor she'd met on a blind date. She'd reached a peak in her personal as in her professional life.
Her career was always successful, her private life less so. But after several Mr. Wrongs, she'd found Mr. Right, a gynecologist, Alan Farthing. They were getting married in the autumn.
She announced her engagement in February. Her fiancé, Dr. Alan Farthing, this evening said he was unable to comprehend what had happened. The police had called him out of his clinic this afternoon to identify her body. Jill Dando's natural vitality in front of the camera, her popularity and her professional stature was such that she'd been chosen to present the BBC's worldwide Millennium coverage. Now, the TV industry and TV viewers are mourning the woman seen as one of the faces of the BBC.
Jill Dando spoke to her killer on the day she was shot dead. Cops follow up sensational new clue, and expert reaches the same conclusion. Her death was ordered by a man she knew well. TV Golden Girl Jill Dando spoke to the shadowy figure who ordered her killing just hours before she was murdered, police believe. Detectives are looking at phone records of calls on her mobile and at her doctor fiancé Alan Farthing's home on the morning she was shot. They want to know how the killer, who laid in wait for the star, knew she would be there that day, as she spent most of her time with Alan. And they believe that the hitman struck her home in London's fashionable Fulham, as Dr. Farthing's house was on a private estate and impossible to stake out. Detectives are now convinced the man behind the horrific assassination had to have spoken to Jill on the morning of April 26 to establish her movements. The startling new revelation adds weight to the #1 police theory that Jill's murder, exactly 20 days ago, was arranged by someone she knew well. The killer must have been acting on direct information to be outside Jill's house at the right time. He was first spotted hanging around her home in Gowan Avenue shortly before 10:30 a.m, when she would have arrived had she gone directly from Dr. Farthing's home in Chiswick, West London. But she stopped off in Hammersmith to do some shopping and arrived later. That would explain the killer's agitated phone calls on his mobile, perhaps to an accomplice who was tailing her, and why he hung around so long. Police believe he was expecting her to arrive at 10:30 a.m, but could not have anticipated that Jill would stop off and buy an ink cartridge for her fax. Murder Squad cops believe an itemised record of calls to Jill in the run-up of her brutal doorstep shooting will prove to be the key to unlocking the stalemate investigation. A senior police source told the Sunday People, "We are anxious to know how the killer was so confident about when Miss Dando would return to her home. One strong line of inquiry we are looking at is that she may have spoken to the man behind her death, her killer, or an accomplice that morning. We are trying to trace all the calls Miss Dando received on that day, and we have been using the latest technology to try and track all the calls made on mobile phones in the Gowan Avenue area. If an accomplice had been tailing Jill, he would have been able to call the gunman on his mobile to warn the killer of a delay. Jill had only been returning home occasionally in the weeks before her death, so the killer had to have been tipped off about her movements in advance. The logical assumption detectives are following is that someone called Jill before the shooting to find out what she was doing, and was told that she would be returning home that day to pick up mail. And it had to be someone she knew well, not to rouse suspicion. This new line of inquiry knocks down theories that the Crime Watch presenter was targeted in a revenge attack by a Serb fanatic or a criminal exposed by the television program. Such a killer would not have been able to establish a pattern to Jill's unpredictable movements. They would have had to risk arousing someone's suspicion by waiting around for days if they had staked out the address on spec. Crime expert John McVicker said the chances of that are too long to bet on. Never mind risk your liberty over. If there was no inside information, the killer would have geared up while she was inside and killed her as she left. It is doubtful too that there is an innocent intermediary who got the information from Jill because after the murder, they would have realized the relevance and told the police. Detectives are convinced that anyone who wanted to harm her needed to be in contact with Jill herself, and only someone close to her would be able to call Jill and casually inquire about her plans, as Jill was obviously unaware of what lay in store for her, until that final scream.
I heard the scream.
You heard her scream?
I did hear a scream. He walked very calmly away from the scene, and when I actually saw him, I thought nothing of it. I thought, in fact, it could have been a friend of Jill's when I heard the screaming. That's why I particularly at that moment didn't do anything that now I wish I could have done.
Did you hear a man's voice or anything like that?
No man's voice at all.
And did you hear a shot, or did you...
There was no shots. That's what I would say was a shot. I wouldn't have thought there was a shot, no.
And what did you do?
The people I was with, the two ladies who also live in the street, dialed the number and had the ambulance services there within 10 minutes.
Taken by ambulance to Charing Cross Hospital, she remained unconscious, having suffered serious head injuries.
Jill Dando arrived here by ambulance at 12:30 p.m. Despite all efforts by hospital paramedics, ambulance paramedics and hospital medical staff, she was certified dead at 1:03 p.m.
Another famous person whose life touched yours was my dear friend, your dear friend, Jill Dando, who was the first to admit that she had the most enormous crush on you at one time.
I know, and I really don't blame her.
Have a look at this.
This truly is a Cinderella fairy story. I came here unescorted, but I'm told that a prince is waiting in the wings. His name is Marcus Salvator von Habsburg-Lothringen. It's not! It's not! It's not! It's not! It's not!
Listen, Jill, I'm so sorry about this. I mean, poor Prince Marcus, he had no chance. I nobbled him. I let his tyres down so I could get here.
I have my knight in shining armour.
You're too kind. Well, I mean, I'd have gone to Cleethorpes Town Hall to dance with you, Jill. Listen,
I can't believe this. I didn't know anything about you being here.
Listen, I know you didn't. I know you thought it was Prince Marcus, what's his name, didn't you? Well, it's not. I'm afraid it's got to be me. Listen, do you mind if we wait for a waltz? I'm not sure I could do this.
I can't do this. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is.
Do you mind if I whirl her away?
Oh, you've met well. I can't believe this. So you do realise, Sir Cliff, that you have just brought the whole of Vienna Opera House to a standstill?
I don't know about the whole Opera House, but certainly all the photographers and various TV cameras seem to be pointing in our direction. I'm not sure it's me, though.
Oh, I think it is.
No, I think you're the head turner.
No. Oh, that's very sweet of you. They all seem to know your name.
Well, they know my name, but they've forgotten what I look like.
phoned me up to tell me about that, and she was so excited.
She really didn't know anything about it, you know. They wouldn't let me leave my hotel room in case I bumped into her in the hotel. And then when they'd all gone, I was able to come out and have a cup of coffee. But she was, and this thing was so with her when she got excited.
Sir Cliff helps with Dando murder hunt. Police interview Star on Jill's personal life. The newsletter, Belfast, Northern Ireland, May 10th, 1999. Pop legend Sir Cliff Richard has been interviewed by detectives seeking key clues to the identity of Jill Dando's killer. It emerged yesterday. Officers spoke to the Star for 2 hours at his £2 million mansion in Weybridge, Surrey on Friday, according to reports. Sir Cliff, who was a close friend of the television presenter, provided police with vital information about Jill's friends, lovers and relationships. In a statement through his manager, Sir Cliff said, "I want to do everything I can to help the police as much as possible to catch Jill's killer. Like everyone else who knew Jill, I was deeply shocked and saddened to hear the news of her tragic and senseless death." Miss Dando became close to the singer after meeting him and sharing a dance with him in a stunt set up by her television bosses. He became a confidant and was a guest at the party in January to celebrate her engagement to gynecologist Alan Farthing. He was also one of the few celebrities invited to her planned wedding later this year. Detectives are said to be convinced that the killer, or person who ordered the murder, was known to the 37-year-old Crime Watch star. Officers were reported to be concentrating on the presenter's love life, studying diaries kept by Miss Dando for any clues to her killer's identity.
Look back into the pop charts, 25 years, you'll see the name of an artist there, and as well, if you look in the pop charts this week, you'll probably see it there this week.
Now, in 1940, a boy was born to the Webb family in India. Harry, as they named him, has since spent a third of his 45 years in the charts, generating an astonishing 80 hit singles.
The man who has become such a national treasure was in fact born in India in 1940 and christened Harry Webb.
You know, why should there be innuendo about the fact that I'm single?
You rush into anything and say, I ought to be married. You know, Parky's a bit baffled, and so is the rest of the world.
Let's welcome tonight Cliff Richard. We're delighted to
The investigation is now focused on an alleged assault on a boy under 16 at an event featuring the American evangelist Billy Graham in the mid-80s. Sir Cliff has called the allegation completely false, but once again the publicity around the search has triggered calls for anonymity to be extended to the accused in cases like this.
Say that before I became a Christian, I asked many questions and hoped really deep down that maybe I wouldn't get the right answer so that I could just call the whole thing off and have a great time.
Search warrant was granted after police received an allegation of a sexual nature dating back to the 1980s.
I, as a Christian, want desperately to tell as many people that will listen that I am a Christian and that Jesus Christ is a living personage and that he belongs to us if only we'll have him. And I would never have had this opportunity to confess him with my lips if I had not been Cliff Richard.
Tonight, police said they have received information as the result of the media coverage of the last few days. This is, though, just the start of what could be a long process. Like anyone else, Sir Cliff Richard is innocent until proven guilty.
I thought it was strange. I thought, gosh, what's happened to Cliff? It didn't seem to be the Cliff that I knew.
You look like a bank manager by then. He had the horn-rimmed glasses and the suit and tie.
At that time, I was an agnostic. Quite frankly, you know, I think to go around spreading religion is as bad as taking drugs.
Everything to God and pray.
Cliff the pop star had been all but consumed by Cliff the Christian. He now found new audiences and friends through events like the Festival of Light, a movement determined to stem the flow of moral pollution in Britain and headed by the holier-than-thou trinity of Mary Whitehouse, Lord Longford and Malcolm Muggeridge. They went on the offensive in 1971. By the 1980s, the sexy hunk who had sung Bachelor Boy was still just that, although there was the odd notable and highly visible romance, like his relationship with tennis player Sue Barker.
It was good for his image, you know, because everyone thought Cliff was gay.
Sue was Britain's hottest young female tennis star. It was 1982, and Cliff was already 42 years old.
And children.
Because we've stated that we're Christians, they come out with this big word, you know, the celibacy thing and all this, which, you know, make us sound like, you know, a monk and a nun going off somewhere. I mean, there's plenty of people around that don't agree, you know, with having sex outside marriage. I mean, we're no different from them.
It was game, set, but ultimately no match for Cliff and Sue.
What I think gnaws away at people is the feeling that some of his alleged romances, like that with Sue Barker, were public relations connivances.
Are you planning any major announcements soon? No, we're not. Categorically not, no. Well, we've only just met. I mean, okay. Is Sue the sort of girl that you would like to marry? You answer that one, David.
It was a very bizarre situation, and it was really odd that 3.5 months later when, well, I suppose it was 3.5, because we met at the end of March, and basically the romance finished in August of that year, so very, very short romance.
What about the constant innuendo that you're gay?
Well, I mean, now, which are they going to have? Either I'm going to get married to Sue or I'm gay. Either I'm a sex maniac or I'm homosexual.
Well, they want to know your sexuality, you see, don't they? That's what they want to know.
Well, I'm not going to tell them everything about me. I've denied my homosexuality. I've denied that I am. And so what else can I say? What am I going to tell people? I mean, that's ridiculous, really.
We need honesty in politics today. Straight talking. A bit more of a Christian-like attitude and less of the slanging.
Oh, hi. I'm a virgin. Sorry? I'm Cliff Richard, and I'm a virgin. Shall I show you to your table? Yes, fine. So long as you don't expect me to sleep with any girls on the way, because that's not my bag. I'm a virgin. Yes, all right, sir. Oh, hi, everyone. I'm a virgin. Hi. Could you keep it down, please, sir? I do keep it down. I'm a virgin. Are you deaf?
He was he definitely stayed there, Cliff Richard. And what name did he go under on the book?
I can't remember off the top of my head.
Was it Gladys or something like that?
Gladys was the nickname of his boyfriend, Norman.
Cliff Richard's boyfriend?
Yeah, Norman.
Sometimes it must be difficult not to feel as if you really are a cliff when fascists keep trying to push you over it. Are they the lemmings, or are you Cliff? Or are you Cliff? My soul, I got the one and only walking, talking, living on.
Oh, I've got this fantastic part, and I have to really get into the character.
Yeah.
It's a psycho case. Well, when you've worked with Rolf Harris, you become a psycho.
In August 2003, just 4 months into the Iraq War, the then Prime Minister, his wife and family accepted an offer to stay at Cliff's house for free. Do you feel uncomfortable about Tony Blair sleeping in your bed?
No, not really.
What about the constant innuendo that you're gay?
For 10 years, we've had lots and lots of requests for the one and only Cliff. So when we got that Cliff had some time to spare, what we did, we turned the tables on somebody, because normally it's the parents that know and it's the children that don't know. This time it was the children that knew and the parent, in this case Mama, who didn't know that this amazing surprise was going to turn up. So listen to this letter.
Dear Jim, please could you fix it for my mum and me to meet Cliff Richard? I'm a fan of his, and my mum has been since she was my age. I hope he is still singing when I have children. Thank you, Gillian Bennett.
So, remember, Mum does not know and has just come back from a shopping trip, as you can see now.
The genders don't mean a thing to him. Like, you know, he's not concerned about women. Never was.
I mean, you know, I've got a booby drive, so if you went for, you know, I don't know, some Cliff Richard or something and ended up with Jimmy Savile.
Hi, are you Gillian? You're the one that wrote to Uncle Jim, is it? Great. Now listen, what have you done with your mum? How long is she going to be away? She won't come back and catch us now. Okay, I'll just hide the car. Ron, you can hide this thing, can you? Thanks. Now then, where are we going to hide? You don't know? Oh, crikey. How long's this been here? Has your mum seen this? Well, there's nobody in it. Should we use it? Right, after you. We'll hide in here until she comes along. Okay. Fancy a cup of tea? Can you see her?
No.
Now, look, I don't know what she looks like. Can you describe her for me?
She's got grey brown hair and wears a white shirt and black skirt and black jumper.
Black skirt, black jumper, white shirt. Okay. Grey brown hair. How tall is she? 8 foot?
Don't know.
God, don't know. You know she's not 8 foot. Anyway, she's not expecting us, is she?
No.
This is a total secret, and it's got to stay that way till she gets here. Oh, is that her? Hang on, hold it. There's 2 of them. Which one's your mum?
The one with the white.
The whitish coat. Oh, your neighbour's very good. She's saying, see you later. There's nothing's happening. She knows all about this, does she?
Yeah.
Oh, she's acting well, isn't she?
Yeah.
Okay. There she is. She's just going in now. Your dad's open door. Right, you know, he's going to be talking. Do we go straight out? Come on, come on. Right, let's run before this car comes across.
The prince is waiting in the wings. His name is Marcus Salvatore von Habsburg-Lothringen. It's not! It's not!
Justice denied. Jill Dando murdered by the state to keep lid on elite paedophile ring. We learn this month that Barry George has been denied compensation for being falsely imprisoned for the murder of Jill Dando. Despite being innocent of all charges against him, and having almost certainly been framed by the British establishment, the courts have refused to allow George the right to appeal against the decision, in what his sister calls a travesty of justice. Why on earth aren't the powers that be willing to acknowledge the distress and suffering caused to Barry George by being wrongly incarcerated for 8 years? Why aren't they awarding him the automatic compensation offer, as they have done in other cases where miscarriages of justice have taken place? Why are they allowing us to think he is in some way still guilty, despite being clearly innocent? Is it because, in their desperation to keep a lid on Britain's dirty secrets, they are willing to sacrifice bloody well anything or anyone? The answer to that is most certainly yes. You see, the brutal murder of Jill Dando was not carried out by a lone stalker or a Serbian warlord. The brutal murder of Jill Dando was linked to a VIP paedophile ring which was operating within the BBC and beyond. The brutal murder of Jill Dando was ordered by the highest echelons of British society.
The Queen said she was shocked and saddened.
Once it became clear that she had evidence of the ring and was about to expose it, Jill Dando was shot at point-blank range in the head to silence her, and to also serve as a warning to other journalists to keep their mouths shut. We now know that child rapist Jimmy Savile had been abusing and procuring children at the BBC for decades, and Jill Dando knew about Savile.
I'd like to kill Jimmy Savile. I think he's a hypocrite. I bet he's into all kinds of seediness.
But everybody at the Sun knew about the Savile necrophilia story.
That we all know about, but are not allowed to talk about.
So I was warned not to cross him because he had some very dangerous gangster friends.
People from the Sun just go around calling living celebrities necrophiliacs. There's a question to answer there.
I know some rumours.
Basically, the message I was given when I arrived at Radio 1 was, stay clear of him, he's a nasty piece of work.
Mark Thompson the other week said, well, it's the first time I don't know anything about it. Head of BBC and you don't know that? Don't be ridiculous, you know.
And who vetted the knighthood? Coco the Clown?
Nobody said a word because of Savile's links to the royals and government. Savile is known to have threatened to silence anyone who crossed him by using his contacts in the state-run IRA and criminal underworld. But Jill Dando was not a lady to stand by and let innocent children be raped. Jill knew about Savile and was not going to be silenced. Jill's close friend and confidant Cliff Richard has himself been named as a visitor to the notorious boys' brothel Elm Guest House, where vulnerable children were trafficked from local care homes to be abused by VIPs. These Elm Guest House VIPs included former Home Secretary Leon Britton, who is famed for conveniently losing the child abuse dossier given to him by Geoffrey Dickens MP in 1983. And proving the cover-up is not historic at all, copies of these dossiers naming senior politicians and judges were seized in 2010 and lost again by 3 police forces, Derby, North Wales and Yorkshire, when these dossiers of evidence were seized by court order from intelligence agent Andrea Davison in 2010. Jill's Elm Guesthouse friend Cliff Richard was interviewed at length by detectives investigating the murder of Jill on several occasions. Why was he such an important witness? Jill's fiancé, Alan Farthing, came face to face with Jill's killer, but conveniently forgot to tell the police. Alan has since risen through the ranks of the medical profession and is now the doctor responsible for the birth of Kate and William's new baby. Was his promotion linked to Jill's murder? Jill's colleague on Crime Watch, Nick Ross, has recently said he'd watched child porn given half a chance. Nick is married to Sarah Kaplan, the cousin of Esther Ranson, who is also implicated in the Savile scandal.
Pardon?
Kaplan and Ranson founded Childline, which is suspected now to be a front organisation used to filter out callers who may have been victims of VIB child abuse. Nick Ross founded the Front Crime Stoppers Helpline. This helpline conveniently stopped working following an appeal for witnesses to Jill's murder. One of the first journalists on the scene was Clarence Mitchell, who is employed by the intelligence services and was later the spokesman in the mysterious disappearance of Madeleine McCann.
That's right, Peter. Yes, no, other than the simple statement arising out of the post-mortem results that Jill was killed, as you say, by a single gunshot to the head and that she died of a brain injury caused by a single bullet. But for now, this has been one of the saddest reporting jobs that I've had to fulfill in many a long time. I knew Jill well, and it really is heartbreaking to report on the murder of a colleague like this.
Clarence Mitchell, thank you.
At the time Madeleine McCann was reported missing, Tony Blair was the British Prime Minister. His Foreign Secretary was David Miliband. His Chancellor of the Exchequer was Gordon Brown. The Blair government was renowned for the fortune of taxpayers' money spent on his PR men, spinners, or as some have called them, professional liars. A key person in this exercise in controlling the media was the head of the government's so-called Media Monitoring Unit in the Central Office of Information. It reported straight to the Cabinet Office at number 10 Downing Street. At its head was Clarence Mitchell, the very man who for the next 7 years was to be the main point of contact for the media covering the Madeleine McCann story. When asked what his role was at the Media Monitoring Unit, Mitchell answered without hesitation, to control what comes out in the media, which is exactly what he has done for the past 7 years. And we know from a Freedom of Information request that Clarence Mitchell was formally appointed to head up the Madeleine McCann PR campaign on Sunday the 6th of May, barely 48 hours after Madeleine had been reported missing. What was it, we might well ask, which was so important about this story that the head of the government's main media unit needed to be sent out to Portugal full-time to cover this story? What exactly was the government's interest? What could a PR man do to help find out what happened to Madeleine McCann?
Mitchell is a notorious master of the dark art of spin and lies, a talent shared by Labour filth Alistair Campbell, who was strangely also quizzed by the Met at the time of the murder. Eyewitness Barry Lindsay, who saw the murderer, said he felt the police didn't want to listen. Police had no interest in his evidence. They brushed it aside because they were obsessed with nailing Barry George, he said. There were many procedural mistakes made by the Met Police during their investigations. Officers conveniently forgot to question Jill's neighbours and also botched the e-fit photo of the suspect by making his hair brown when it was actually blonde.
I knew Jill well, and it really is heartbreaking to report on the murder of a colleague like this.
Were these mistakes made deliberately to ensure the real killer would never get caught? In a most sinister development, DCS Hamish Campbell, who was in charge of the investigation, was then put in charge of Operation U-Tree. Campbell was also the head of the investigative review into the disappearance of little Madeleine McCann. Are these mere coincidences, or is there much more to the murder of Jill Dando than meets the eye? Are the police, the judiciary, the CPS, the BBC and the government implicated in one of the biggest cover-ups this country has ever seen? It's no wonder the establishment won't give Barry George the justice and compensation he deserves. If they did, their sordid child-abusing secrets may finally be exposed.
The detective in charge of the hunt for the attacker describes it as about the worst crime he or any of his 30 officers have ever worked on. Now, a lot of hopes tonight are pinned on Crime Watch viewers. The offence was committed by a man who's obviously obsessed, and if he's not caught, he might well try to hurt someone again. Now, has the victim been able to give a description of her attacker?
Yes, she has. She's extremely traumatised. She's a thoroughly decent young lady. She's given a lot of detail, but perhaps fortunately two people who saw the attacker moments before have provided an artist's impression, which is believed to be a good likeness, and a good description, which is of a man in his late 30s, early 40s, 5'9" to 6 foot.
A man was seen leaving from outside number 29 Gowan Avenue, and he ran east down this road towards the Fulham Palace Road. A man between late 30s and 40s, white. He was carrying a mobile phone, he was clean shaven, and he had dark hair. The witnesses describe him as being well groomed, possibly wearing a jacket or a suit. And anybody who knows that man or anybody else who saw that person out there, we would like to speak to.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Well, for those of us who have performed in the show, it's been a real pleasure to sing songs dedicated to the memory of the lovely Jill Dando. Me, I'm just really happy that I was a friend of hers, and that the last few years of her life, we became really close. And I was so thrilled when she told me that she and Alan, her fiancé, had amongst their favorites one of my songs. It's this one, and I've asked Elaine Page to join me to sing it, and it's called Miss You Nights. I've had many times, I can tell you, times when innocence I trade for company.
Children saw me crying, I thought I'd had my share of that,
but these miss you
are the longest. Midnight diamonds starred my heaven, softwood burning like the jewels that I don't play.
Warm winds that embrace me just as surely kissed your face. Yeah, these miss you nights,
they're the longest. How I miss you,
how I miss you, I'm not likely to tell. I'm a man, cold daylight buys the bright. I'd rather sell all my secrets.
all my secrets are a wasted affair. You know them well. Thinking of my going, how to cut the thread and leave it all behind. Looking windward,
my compass, I take each day as it arrives. But these miss you nights.
But a golden career and those hopes of future happiness ended bloodily just before midday. A terrible price to pay for being lovely and famous. A terrible shock for you and me, who knew her.
laid out our thoughts of your surrender.
It's only me
Who's killing time?
laid out our dreams and needs. Once remember,
just the same. Dismiss you again. I've had many times, I can tell you, times when innocence I trade for company. But these miss you nights are the longest.
And that's the main news tonight, the brutal killing that today stunned everyone here at the BBC Television Centre. At the age of 37, in her prime as the nation's most popular presenter and radiantly looking forward to marriage in the autumn, Jill Dando was shot down by an attacker outside her home not 2 miles from here. A senseless murder that leaves this newsroom in which she worked a darker place and makes a lot poorer the medium which she graced. Good night.